Top 1. BYD Song Ultra EV. This is the one BYD is hoping will quietly take over the family SUV market. It sits right in the same size class as a Nissan Qashqai or a Kia Sportage, but underneath it's running BYD's newest electric platform. A single rear motor puts out around 270 kilowatts. That's roughly 362 horsepower, which is more than enough for overtaking on the motorway without any drama. The bigger battery option is rated for up to 710 kilometers on the Chinese CLTC cycle, so once that's converted to the more realistic WLTP figure UK buyers actually use, you're probably looking at something in the 550 to 600 kilometer range in everyday driving. That's still a proper long-distance cruiser, enough to get from London to Edinburgh with maybe one short top-up along the way. What's really turning heads, though, is the charging. BYD's flash charging tech can take the battery from 10 to 70% in around 5 minutes, which, if you think about it, is less time than it takes to queue for a coffee at a service station. In China, the starting price undercuts a Tesla Model Y by close to $15,000, and if BYD brings anything close to that pricing structure over to the UK, dealers like Kia and Nissan are going to have some very uncomfortable conversations internally. Inside, the cabin follows that same formula BYD's been using across the range. A rotating central touchscreen, decent soft touch materials, and a layout that feels a generation ahead of what you'd find in a similarly priced Qashqai. There's also a strong focus on driver assistance tech, adaptive cruise, lane centering, the usual suite, but tuned in a way that early testers say feels less twitchy than some rivals. Early demand numbers back all of this up too. Over 60,000 orders in the first month it went on sale, with showroom visits jumping 40% in just 3 days after launch. For a market that's used to slow, cautious EV adoption, that kind of spike is unusual. It tells you people aren't just curious about this car. They're actually ready to buy it. And for a UK buyer sat on the fence about going electric, a family SUV with this much range, this much charging speed, and a price that undercuts the establishment, that's a genuinely hard case to argue against. Top 2, BYD Han L EV. This is where things get a bit more serious. The Han L is BYD's flagship saloon, and it's aimed squarely at buyers who'd normally be cross-shopping a BMW 5 Series or maybe even a Porsche Taycan. The performance figures are honestly a bit absurd for the price point. We're talking acceleration numbers that wouldn't look out of place on a supercar spec sheet, all wrapped up in a car that costs roughly what you'd pay for a well-equipped Honda Accord back in the day. That's the trick BYD keeps pulling off. Taking performance that used to require a 6-figure badge and putting it into something that's actually attainable for a regular working professional. Inside, the Han L leans heavily into that big tech brand feel. Large displays, a genuinely premium sound system, and the kind of build quality that makes you double-check the badge on the steering wheel. The seats are finished in a synthetic leather that BYD claims matches genuine hide for feel, and there's ambient lighting, a panoramic roof, and enough sound insulation that road noise at motorway speeds is noticeably lower than what you'd get in something like a Skoda Superb. Underneath, it rides on an updated version of BYD's e-platform, which brings improvements to ride comfort specifically. Something earlier, BYD saloons were criticised for being a touch too firm on rough British roads. For UK buyers who've been eyeing an EV saloon but keep getting put off by the price of a Model S or a Taycan, this is exactly the kind of car that could shift that conversation. And BYD isn't shy about pushing this one hard in export markets either. It's become something of a flagship for showing off what their newest electric architecture can actually do when they're not holding anything back. If it lands in the UK anywhere near its home market pricing, it puts genuine pressure on the German saloon establishment for the first time in a long while. Top 3, BYD Tang L EV. the big seven-seater in the lineup, and honestly, this is the one that's going to worry Volvo and Land Rover the most. British families love a proper three-row SUV, and the Tang has quietly built a reputation in other markets as one of the more usable ones. Decent boot space, even with all seats up, which is something a lot of rivals in this segment still get wrong, forcing you to fold a row down just to fit the weekly shop. The pre-order numbers out of China were staggering, around 150,000 orders in just the first few weeks. Now that's not a niche success story. That's the kind of number most legacy automakers would celebrate as an entire year's global sales target for one single model. What makes the Tang interesting for the UK specifically is the timing. Families here are increasingly nervous about running two cars, one for the school run, one for longer trips. And something like this, with proper range, all-wheel drive traction for wet British winters, and space for the dog, the pushchair, and the weekly shop, hits a very specific need that's been underserved. It's not flashy in the way the Han is, but it doesn't need to be. It just needs to work every single day without drama, and that's precisely the reputation BYD has been building with more practical buyers. There's also talk of a plug-in hybrid variant sitting alongside the full electric version, which would appeal to families who aren't quite ready to go fully electric, but want the flexibility anyway. And from what we're seeing out of other right-hand drive markets already testing it, that's exactly what it does. Quietly competent, unglamorous, and reliable in a way that builds trust over time rather than through spec sheet bragging. Top 4. BYD Seal Ilo 8. If you've been paying attention to BYD in the UK already, you'll know the Seal name carries some weight here. The standard Seal has been one of their best sellers since launch, genuinely giving the Tesla Model 3 a run for its money on the school run and the motorway alike, with reviewers repeatedly praising how planted and composed it feels through corners for a car at this price. The Seal 08 takes that same DNA and stretches it into something more substantial. More of a crossover shape, more interior space, but keeping that same sharp, planted way of driving that reviewers kept praising in the original. Power output is up around 644 horsepower on the range-topping version, paired with a claimed range approaching 900 kilometers. Obviously, that's the optimistic Chinese testing figure, so knock a chunk off for real UK motorway driving in the cold and rain, but even a conservative estimate puts this well ahead of most rivals at the same price point. In its first 30 hours on sale back home, it pulled in over 65,000 pre-orders, which is the kind of launch number that makes established brands genuinely nervous and forces them to look twice at their own pricing strategy. There's also been talk of a performance variant sitting above the standard car, which would push those numbers even higher, though nothing's been confirmed for right-hand drive markets yet. For UK buyers, the appeal here is simple. You get the driving character people already love about the Seal, but with the practicality that a lot of buyers said the original was missing when they compared it to something like a Skoda Enyaq. It's the sequel that actually listens to what people asked for, rather than just chasing bigger numbers for the sake of it. Top 5. BYD Ceelion 8. This is BYD's answer to the three-row electric SUV gap that's been sitting wide open in the UK market. Yes, there's already a Ceelion 5 and a Ceelion 7 doing well over here, but the Ceelion 8 goes bigger. Proper seven-seat practicality wrapped in that same coupe SUV styling that's made the smaller Ceelion models look genuinely upmarket rather than just practical, with a sloping roofline that doesn't actually eat into rear headroom the way you'd expect. It was revealed for the Australian right-hand drive market first, which tells you a lot. BYD tends to test cars in right-hand drive markets before committing to a full UK rollout, and the fact that this one's already circulating there suggests it's closer to a UK launch than most people think. Insiders at BYD's UK operation have already hinted, without confirming outright, that something in this exact 7-seat SUV space is coming soon. And given how much interest British families have shown in the smaller Celian models, a proper 7-seater with even more space feels like an obvious next step rather than a gamble. Expect the usual BYD trimmings too: the rotating touchscreen, a strong warranty offer to ease worries about long-term reliability, and pricing aimed squarely at undercutting the competition rather than matching it. If it launches at anything close to the pricing BYD's known for, it's going to sit right in the crosshairs of the Volvo X90 and the Kia EV9, except considerably cheaper, and for a lot of British families, that price gap alone could be the deciding factor. Top 6. Yangwang U9. And finally, the one that genuinely doesn't make sense on paper until you remember who's building it. Yangwang is BYD's ultra-premium performance brand, and the U9 is their answer to the Bugatti and Rimac crowd. We're talking a price tag pushing towards $3 million in some configurations, 4 electric motors, and acceleration figures that put it in genuine hypercar territory. 0 to 60 in the low 2-second range, with a top speed that rivals cars costing twice as much. It even has a party trick where the suspension can lift the car up on 3 wheels if one gets a puncture, letting it sort of hop along to safety. Which sounds like something out of a film, but BYD has actually demonstrated it publicly, and the footage genuinely looks like special effects until you realize it's real. The suspension system itself, called DISUS, can also make the car physically jump over small obstacles or bounce in place, which BYD has used in demonstrations partly for spectacle and partly to show off just how far ahead their engineering has come. Now, realistically, this isn't a car most people will ever see on a British road, but that's not really the point of it. The point is proving a capability, showing the industry, and frankly showing buyers of their more affordable models, that the same company building your family SUV also has the engineering chops to build something that can humiliate a Bugatti on a track. It's a halo car in the truest sense. It exists to change perception rather than to sell in any real volume. And judging by how the conversation around BYD has shifted over the last couple of years, from cheap Chinese alternative to serious global competitor, it's working exactly as intended, one unbelievable headline at a time.